Hi friends, Dr. Priyadarshini is back with another video from Dr. Priyadarshini's Wills Coffee House Academy. This video is going to be a complete study of Margaret Atwood's most prescribed novel, Surfacing. This video is going to cover wide topics which include a brief introduction of Margaret Atwood and her works, which is followed by political background of Quebec, which forms a proper backdrop of the novel. Then I would also like to extend by introducing the characters of the novel, which is followed by plot and narration, which also includes justification of the title of the novel, Surfacing. Few one-word answers were also discussed so that NTA net aspirants and Polytechnic aspirants would be privileged enough that they need not go for any other material for a complete revision. Not only that, I have also spoken about a scope of doing a research on or working for research paper on this novel. I believe that this video would be very useful to you, so stay tuned and listen to it till the end. So let me begin with a short introduction about author, which would contribute very much to the novel in concern. Margaret Eleanor Atwood. So that's her full name. So kindly note it. She is a Canadian writer, a prolific poet, a successful novelist, an unbiased literary critic, a feminist, and a social activist. She did not attend the school full time until she was 11 years old, so she became a voracious reader not just of literature but also of Dell pocketbook mysteries, Grimm's fairy tales, Canadian animal stories, and comic books. These books that she read during her childhood had a great impact on her, which would be evident in her works she wrote in the later part of her life. For instance, in Surfacing, the narrator illustrates her freelance job for a book of fairy tale. So that much impact the book she read in her childhood imbibed on her. She first started writing at the age of 6 and she wanted to become a serious writer at the age of 16. Due to her father's ongoing research in forest entomology, Atwood spent much of her childhood in backwood of northern Quebec. This is very important as we find so many similarity of this particular part of the life of Atwood with that of the narrator's life in Surfacing. So, when it comes to works of Margaret Atwood, she has written many remarkable works, out of which I would like to point out some of the most iconoclastic work of Atwood. So let me read it out from the slide. She has written The Edible Woman in the year 1969, Surfacing, the novel in question in the year 1972, Lady Oracle, this is very important work of Atwood, and that was published in the year 1976. Life Before Man was published in the year 1979. Handmaid's Tale, this is very important work of Margaret Atwood. It got published in the year 1985. Cat's Eye in 1988. Another important work of Atwood is Blind Assassin, and that got published in the year 2000. And all these are novels, and she is also a successful poet, and she has written so many poems. And she has also written a popular prose piece, Survival. It is considered to be a thematic guide to Canadian literature, and it serves as a treatise of hardship of life in Canada, which ultimately ends up being the theme of Canadian literature. So that is the most important prose piece of Margaret Atwood, which I would like to emphasize, because she has given a kind of formula to Canadian literature through the book. Political backdrop of the novel. Now, why should we understand the political background of the novel? Is it very important to the novel? When you ask me this question, I say yes. Because without understanding the political condition of Quebec or Canada during the time, it would be really hard to understand the novel. So, understanding the political background is very important. When you read the novel, you can understand that the novel has some anti-American standpoint. So, why is that anti-American standpoint is emphasized in the novel? And you can find so many characters associated with France or French province is being repeated in the novel. So in order to understand the significance of anti-American standpoint and French province, we should really understand the political backdrop of the novel. So before getting into the political background, I would like everyone to check with the political map of Canada. We're going to focus much on Quebec. Quebec, it is in the eastern part of the map. You find it, a province, Quebec. And narrator travels from Toronto to Quebec in search of her father. So Toronto, so where is it exactly? In the map, you find the from the east, central east part, Ontario. In Ontario, down below you find Ottawa, and down below Ottawa you find Toronto over there. So from Toronto, narrator is setting her journey to Quebec in search of her father. So the novel, the setting of the novel is in Quebec. So the novel takes place exactly at Quebec. And the time span of the novel is for 2 weeks. So these are all important, certainly few important points that should always be remembered. Now, Quebec is the only Canadian province populated with the residents of French descent, and the rest is with British. So you have to understand this, because when you take the official language of Canada, French and English being declared as official language, it is all because of this, because the French descents were, Quebec was highly populated with the French descents, and that is why it has been treated like the French is treated as an official language, whereas the rest of the province of Canada were populated with Britishers. Atwood wrote surfacing at a time when the cultural difference between Quebec and the rest of the Canada were manifesting themselves in terms of Quebec's autonomy. In 1960, there came a revolution called Quiet Revolution in Quebec, which brought various reforms of economy and education. The Quiet Revolution afforded Quebec a greater political and economic autonomy, which resulted in desire of French citizens to get Quebec separated from the rest of the provinces of Canada. This political change is highlighted in the novel. So that is why I wanted everyone to understand the political backdrop of the novel. So the history of Quebec is not the only political backdrop of the novel, where we have to understand what America has done to Canada, because you always find an anti-American point of view. If you take the character of David, or maybe the character of narrator herself, she had a common ideology that the Americans tend to kill animals in order to have fun. So this kind of ideology was within the mind of Canadians. So what made them to have such ideology, for which we have to understand the role played by America in the political history of Canada. There is always this anti-American standpoint, as I told you in the novel. You can find David, an important character in surfacing, is also anti-American to a great extent, and even the narrator herself, as I told you. A strong dislike of American way of exerting its cultural influence over Canada is shown in novel. That is, America always wanted a kind of cultural infiltration of Canada. That is, America always wanted a kind of, putting or injecting the cultural influence on Canada. So that is the only point where the Canadians started to dislike Americans. And Margaret Atwood personally calls such cultural infiltration of Canada itself as a form of colonization. And you have another undercurrent going in the novel. It is a minor undercurrent though, and it is nothing but the impact of Second World War. The narrator recalls growing up in the wake of Second World War and documents the effect of war on her in her childhood. So she had a kind of post-trauma, post-war trauma, and she suffered a kind of traumatic childhood because of war. So that has also been highlighted. So with this knowledge on political background, let us step inside the novel. So, in order to understand the novel, we have to get into the characters. We have to understand the characters. So, let us get into the character. We have a narrator. So, in the novel, you find a narrator. The name of the narrator is not found anywhere in the novel. You just find a kind of unnamed narrator, and most of the critics often they like to call the narrator as a surfacer. So you have this unnamed narrator, and she is the center of the novel. And you have another character called Joe. He is narrator's boyfriend, and there is another couple friend of narrator, that is Anna and David. Anna, she is a sly wife of David. David, a friend of narrator, but a womanizer and a torturous husband. You have another set of characters like Paul and Madam. Paul is a friend of narrator's father. As I told you earlier, the narrator comes to Quebec in search of a father. To know more about or more whereabouts of her father, she had to meet someone like Paul to know much on her father. And Madam, there's another character. She is Paul's wife, and she is a French lady. And there's another character like Bill Armstrong. He is an American. Through his character, you can understand how much David and the narrator herself, they had a hatredness towards an American. And you have this guide called Events, and there is the fake husband of the narrator. The fake husband, in the sense, he is an art professor with whom narrator had an affair. So these are all the minor, the important characters. Apart from this, you have few other minor characters. So with these characters, let us step into the plot of the. Now, for the convenience of narrating the plot, I have taken the liberty of dividing the entire plot under 5 headings. Number 1, narrator attempts to search her father. How she came from Toronto to Quebec in order to search father, and various attempts that she takes to search her father, though it all went in vain. So that has been, discussed about in the plot. The second is understanding the couples. Couples in the sense, a couple David and Anna, another couple Joe and narrator. Their characters. That is very important when it comes to plot. The third part of the plot is a flavor of anti-Americanism that has been discussed. And the fourth part is diving deep into identity. There's something called formation of I moment in every novel. That is, formation of I is self-realization. Lacan actually calls it as formation of I. When you look into the mirror, being a child, you understand that you are no more a part of your mother, whereas you are an individual. So you got something like a formation of I, something like I. So this is the I. So in every novel, you have this particular phase, the formation of I moment, where you discover yourself. So even in this novel, you have this point when she dives deep into the lake, she has this kind of formation of I. So that is very important point of the plot where she's undergoing a great metamorphosis or a great transformation. That is very important. And the fifth part being a return to nature. What happens after self-discovery? She returns to nature. So this is the basic skeleton of the plot where I'm going to tell you the story, what happens within the plot. So listen carefully to the story. Narrator visits Quebec after a long absence in search of her father who went missing while researching on an Indian cave wall painting. In order to know the whereabouts of her father, she meets her father's friend Paul. She visits Quebec with her boyfriend Joe and another friend couple, David and wife Anna. They decide to stay on the island for a week. Anna is often tortured by David to wear makeup. Anna tolerates him and she also admits that David is a womanizer. Joe, on the other hand, proposes his love to the narrator, but she rejects it. And it is only at this point she talks about how she left her last husband and child for an art professor who faked love for her. She happened to abort her baby by the art professor. David, on the other hand, brings Bill Armstrong, an American who was said to be from a Detroit Wildlife Agency, and Armstrong offers to purchase the island, but the narrator disagrees as she believes that her father is alive. After Armstrong left the place, David suspects him for being a CIA agent sent to spy Canada to conquer it. This shows his anti-American standpoint. In another incident, the narrator saw a heron being killed and hanged, and she suspects the campaigner to be the Americans because she associated the cruel act of killing animals and exploiting nature with Americans. The transformation in the character of narrator comes when she visits a site located in her father's map in search of him, where she finds the government raised the water level of the lake and she realizes that she has to dive inside the lake to find the Indian cave. So she dives. She finds a vision of a dead child. With horror, she screams. She understands that the vision that she had was her aborted child. She had a kind of a rebirth after that. She had a kind of transformation that she started to shed her identity as a human being as she started to assume herself with animals. A shift from culture to nature takes place. Meanwhile, Joe attempted to rape her, but she resisted him, saying that she would become pregnant. She abandons her friends because after a kind of rebirth she had, after the transformation, she doesn't want to be with her associates anymore. She wanted to be alone. And eventually, all her friends left the island searching for her in vain. She became alone. She, being left alone in the island, falls into a deeper madness. She becomes an animal, running around naked, eating unwashed plants, living in burrows. She imagines, raising her baby outdoor, teaching no language to the baby. Eventually, hunger and exhaustion brings the narrator back to sanity. Meanwhile, Paul arrives at the island with Joe. Narrator gets reunited with Joe to beget a child through him. So with this, the novel ends. So on knowing the plot of the novel, now it's high time for us to go into analysis of the novel. So let's get to it. Here is the justification of the title. So what made the author to give a title surfacing to this particular novel? Generally, the word surfacing means to rise or to come up the water to the ground. That is, when you dive inside the water body, after diving, you come up, and that is called surfacing. So, on analyzing the pattern of the plot, it suggests surfacing is nothing but it talks about rebirth. When she jumps inside, she was more a human being. When she comes out after having a vision from the lake, she had a kind of rebirth and she had a transformation where she started assuming herself with animals than human beings. So, Surfacing, the title suggests a rebirth or even baptism from which she emerges as a new woman. She goes in search of her father who is missing and ends up in a kind of visionary, a trance-like state in which she communicates with the spirit of nature. On the way, she is guided by Indian myth, but goes past even these, finding or envisaging her own spirit or symbol, which is appropriate for a creative artist like the narrator. So ultimately, what I can say with the justification of title is surfacing is coming out of the water, and now when she jumps inside the water, she was perfectly a human being. When she comes out, she shedded all her identity with human being and she associated herself with nature. That is why she assumes herself as animal than human being. So it is a kind of rebirth. So the justification of title is, it is suggesting a kind of rebirth. Themes. This is another important area to get investigated upon. So when it comes to a novel, we are supposed to discuss the various themes that comes in the way of novel. The first theme being separation. Separation, I consider it to be a major theme of the novel. The narrator feels disconnected from the people around her. You remember how she went to Toronto, from Toronto to Quebec, where she doesn't have any associates. She doesn't have people around her who knows her language. She had different kind of people. Their culture is different. The way they live their life is different. The language they speak is different. So she is somewhere disconnected with the people around her. In the opening chapter, we find the narrator politically displaced as an English speaker in Quebec, the only French province in Canada, at a time in which Quebec was actually aspiring to become an independent French-speaking nation. So that is the time when she was there into the Quebec, and she literally felt that she was displaced. So that is why separation was the main theme in the novel. The next theme would be madness. Madness in the novel we find with the deterioration of the mental reasoning of the narrator. She is a kind of an introvert. When she is introduced in the novel, though she is the narrator, but she doesn't like to talk much. She is a kind of introvert feeling isolated. We find her character a character to be a round one than a flat one, because she had a kind of transformation after the vision she had while diving into the lake. Her post-war trauma has also been focused on the novel, as she had a post-World War impact during her childhood. So madness was something which was very much prevalent as a theme in the novel. It travels from the beginning to the end of the novel, where you ultimately find her completely insane. So madness is an ultimate theme of the novel. And the third theme is feminism. Surfacing is all about female, a perspective of a woman, an unbalanced professional and private life of a woman, a search of a woman, a self-realization of a woman, living her life as a woman itself, being composed. You know, everything if you compose together, it becomes the novel surfacing. The character of Anna serves as a subplot where her life is contrasted with that of the narrator, while it is compared very much with that of animal who become victim of human violence. That is why I always prefer to adopt ecofeminism into the novel, where nature and female both undergo the same violence. So feminism being one important theme, the next would be language. Throughout the novel, though not directly imposed, we always had an emphasis on language. The narrator is unable to use her language, shows her powerlessness. Words often betrayed her. Often the language of human being resembles the sound of animal. She cannot understand what people talk around her. Even when she goes mad, she vows not to teach her child any language. So the companionship of language along with the feminism and madness is always present throughout the novel. And finally, you have this theme called return to nature. We find the narrator discarding her identity as a human being and how she associated herself with animals towards the end of the novel. We find all this happening, throughout like a gradual metamorphosis of the narrator's character in the novel. So that is a return to nature. When it comes to narration, we have to discuss. So this is very important because narration, brings the pattern to the novel. When it comes to narration, I would like to divide the narration into two. One is narrative pattern. The second one is narrative technique. Now, what is narrative pattern? The recurrence of few things coming and going, there's a pattern in it. For instance, let us take, a kind of vertical and horizontal pattern in the novel where a dichronic and synchronic kind of separation can be given, where in dichronic study you can find the past traumatic memories of the narrator, where she experienced her childhood trauma, how Second World War had an impact on her. All this comes with past memories. And in the synchronization, you find the attempt to search her father, where she goes and meets Paul, where she visits the various sites marked in her father's map, and how she travels and how she carries out the task, systematic way of searching her father, and all these comes in synchronization pattern. So the intersection of diachronization and synchronization is evident in narration. So that is why I call it as narrative pattern, where you often have this past memory coming and going in the complete search of her, the quest of her father. It will be intersected with the past memory. The next part of analysis would be narrative technique. In narrative technique, you find a double way of narration. The first one is where the narrator herself is narrating in first person. And though she is a narrator, but then she is unreliable because she undergoes madness. So she is unreliable narrator, but then you have a kind of a narrative in first person. The second thing is what happens to the narrator after she becomes mad, because after becoming mad she cannot narrate you the plot. I mean, she cannot narrate you the story because she becomes mad, but then you have to know what is happening with her. So in order to fulfill that requirement, Atwood has used poetry to describe what happens to the narrator after she becomes insane. So this is the narrative technique. And now I have a set of question and answers for all the aspirants of NTA NET, as well as those people who wanted to appear in Polytechnic exam, where surfacing is a part of the syllabus. So I have given certain questions and I have discussed about it. The first question being, surfacing takes place at dash. That is, setting of surfacing novel is Quebec. Second question, Quebec is populated by the residents of French descent. Third question, who is the narrator searching for? Quite evident, she has come in search of her father. Fourth question, what is the narrator illustrating for her freelance job? So what is her freelance job is all about? To write a book of fairy tales. So that is the answer. Number fifth, what is narrator looking for on her camping trip? She is looking for wall paintings, because wall paintings is the area in which her father had undertaken his research, and he went missing by the time. So in order to find her father, she had to visit the places where her father visited, and probably she had to visit all the wall paintings, cave paintings visited by her father. So that is the place exactly she wanted to visit. Sixth question. What does the narrator find while she is diving in the lake? Dead child. Seventh one. Who tries to rape the narrator? Joe, her boyfriend. Eighth question. The name of the film David is making. This is very important question because it is not very much given in the plot, but then it is there in the story, I mean in the novel. So the name of the film David is making is Random Samples. The narrator and her friend find a dead animal strung up in the wood. What was the animal? This is the question. And the answer of which is heron. Heron, the picture of heron is given below. This is for Indians, the Indian audience who doesn't really get associated with the bird. The next question is, when the narrator decides to revert to more animalistic behavior towards the end of the novel, where does she choose to live in? Lair. Lair is a burrow-like thing where animals live. It's a cave or it's a kind of burrow. Look into the picture where the lion is living. It resides in a lair. The next question is, what does the narrator thinks she sees below her when she goes diving by the cliff? So what does she find when she jumped inside the or dived inside the lake? She found the fetus that she had aborted. So that's the answer. What life change is the narrator looking forward at the end of the novel? She is looking towards the nature. She wanted to become one with nature. The answer is not given there. But then I'm telling you, she wanted to return to nature. So that is the life change she expected. So what is the time span of the novel? 2 weeks. Now, after discussing questions for the NET aspirants and Polytechnic aspirants, I would like to focus some attention towards the researchers, where I would like to talk about the scope of the novel. So the novel, though it was published in 1970s, but then you still have a scope for it. Because the common topic when you read the novel, you can associate the novel with eco-criticism, eco-feminism, post-colonialism, no doubt. But then there are few areas which has not been touched upon by the researchers still. So I would like to focus on that areas. Now I would like to highlight the guilt concept in Beloved and Surfacing. Beloved, a novel written by Toni Morrison, Surfacing, Margaret Atwood, where the guilt of killing a child, that is a common thing you find in both the novels. So you can discuss about that. You can write a paper on that, or you can have your research findings on that. The next topic is compare surfacing and the fringe of leaves, where culture nature conflict is quite evident. So that can be spoken about. So that is also a good area to focus on. The third one is ideology in religion in surfacing. This can be dealt with a reference to Buchanan. So these are few concepts that has been not much focused on. So if you want to do something new on surfacing, you can either use these as your topics and you can go for a good research. So with this, I'm completing my video, and before putting an end to it, I would like to tell you something. To know more on English literature, you can mail me. I have given my mail ID, so you can mail me and you can give your questions for which I would personally respond to you. And you can subscribe my channel to get more videos, because I'll be posting more videos. And if you really like my video, you can hit like button. So with this, I'm completing my video. So let's meet in the next video. Till then, stay tuned. Thank you very much.